This is Bob Fitrakis with Dan Dougan on the other side of the news, streaming live on the Free Press Network, WGRN.org, and on the radio at WGRN, LP-FM 94.1, and WCRS, LP-FM 92.7, and 98.3.
Yes. Right
Mr.
there.
Dougan, how's life?
Fake, going to show
We've
it.
had
Death and hatred to mankind, poisoning their brainwashed minds. Oh, Lord, yeah.
We had, he began to say, before our lovely graphic popped up on the screen there, which you on the radio probably didn't see or hear. But at any rate, we had a benefit for the Columbus Free Press this week, and I had way too much fun. I ended up going with Connie Harris and Michael Duty across the street to the Lidos. After you guys had all left at 10 o'clock or whatever it was, we soldiered on and went to an open stage at Andy Shaw. Thank you, Andy, for letting us take over. Connie actually had a whole band up there.
Uh-huh.
And Duty,
Connie
and
Harris.
Duty and I were holding court at the bar. And I ran into some guy from NERC who seemed to know everyone from NERC and told me lots of stories about NERC. Anyway, so he was a friend of my little brother's, my real little brother. And me and the little brothers had fun playing at the Free Press.
That's right,
what I
man.
wanted to
You
say.
did a great job as
Got the
the
MC.
MC,
There you go. And stage man.
which often seems like a thankless task.
It can be when certain someones might just walk up to the microphone, invite themselves to the microphone and begin to hold forth discourse about the world of politics. And you know who I mean.
And yes, and at a Free
someone's
Press,
wife, someone else's wife is looking at you going, how did he get on the stage?
and
He got
at a
past me,
Free
boss.
Press event, you open the barn door with one, and next there's a line of 20
Yes.
that want the mic.
Right. Well, as I like to say, it's not herding cats, it's cats herding cats. Meow. So, but we did great and had a really good time. I want to thank everybody that came out and supported the Columbus Free Press.
The
Very
yearly
important.
community awards.
Very important. Dr. Bob's paper stays around for at least a few more years.
Well, next year's the
Spread
big
the
year,
word.
the 50th anniversary, October of 2020.
All right then. Well, we'll look forward to that too. Get to play Rockstar again maybe. So, want to talk about some elections here in the Buckeye State, Dr. Bob?
Well, we can talk about local elections, particularly the city council and school board elections.
Mm-hmm. On
Up-
council, our buddy Joe Motil did not make it, unfortunately, as did not make the other progressive candidates.
Well, it's hard to beat the machine. There was only an
Right.
estimated 22% or so voter turnout, 22, 24% in that range. In order to beat the machine, because there are people going to come out, particularly those that work for the city, those that are sort of beholding to the incumbents on city council, and you've got to excite people and get them out. I think Yes We Can's got to have a broader coalition. I think they ought to reach out to Greens like myself, former Greens. There's no longer a Green Party. You know, I'm now a registered Democrat since I voted
Wait,
for
wait.
Dennis Kucinich.
Just because you're now a registered Democrat, then there's no longer a Green Party?
No, I became a registered Democrat because the Greens got thrown off the ballot.
Right, okay.
So,
that's what you're saying, the Greens are no longer.
A party, so it doesn't give me much options, but I did have an option, and I did vote for Dennis Kucinich when he ran for
Right.
the governor in 2018.
And you would vote for who for president if it were held tomorrow?
Well, I would vote for Bernie Sanders just because I've known him since 1980. He's been consistent, and he's got very progressive politics. But bringing that up, the question is, who would the people vote for against Trump?
Right.
So Trump is
I think it's time
trailing
there's a woman in
nationally.
the White House, and I mean it.
Well, here's some interesting,
I like Liz.
interesting polling data.
Suddenly we're into the national politics. I love this. We
Well,
had a bit of an agenda, but we'll get back.
Yeah,
to
we'll get back to
We'll
city
get back
council.
to it, yes.
But we'll talk in more detail.
Do tell.
There's a small sliver that seems to not like Elizabeth Warren. It's almost like she's too smart, she's too uppity. She's too book learned.
Right, that's right.
She's a reader.
polite, too. Darn it.
She's a darn reader. She's
dare she-
and she,
yeah.
worse than that, she reads
them.
nonfiction.
Eggheads.
And again, New York Times had her on the cover of their magazine saying she's got a policy for everything.
Right.
But
yes.
is that enough?
Well-
But she has these well thought out
Yes,
policies.
she does. Yeah.
And,
Bernie does too.
Apparently, a small
I hope.
sliver of the male population won't vote for her. In fact,
The male population.
yeah, if you look at the swing states, where really the presidency will be decided, Biden at this point does better.
Who is specific about almost nothing.
Nothing, right, exactly. Sanders is then the next best.
Okay.
Looks like he's even in one, could win one of them out of the six. Biden's winning 4 out of the 6.
Swing states.
But yeah, Elizabeth Warren, who's running ahead of Sanders, but a little behind Biden, doesn't seem to win any of the battleground states, particularly
yet.
in the South and the Midwest,
For now.
for now.
Okay. Well, we are going to talk more about our commander-in-chief, but we were also
Talking
on the
about
recent
city
elections.
council here locally.
City council, and once again, our progressive candidates did not make it. But your point is well taken, that the Yes We Can candidates did not reach out enough to the progressive. Although it seemed like they were out a lot
Well,
of events.
they're progressive, they're out there, but you
Moto
gotta.
was at the Bernie
Well,
gathering.
you're not going to win without someone at the top of your
Meadery.
ticket, right? If you've got nobody at the top of the ticket
Yeah.
bringing in new voters, exciting people, with an all-out attack on the developers, unless you can, Ginther was running unopposed.
Well,
Yes,
yeah,
we
it's
can
easy to
needed
win that way, for
somebody
sure. Right.
dynamic at the top of the ticket that would have, maybe a woman of color,
Right.
somebody that would have brought out people that, the 3/4 of the population that
Suzanne
didn't
Patzer.
vote. Well, I would argue for that, but
Yeah, so would I.
she hates, public limelight.
I understand that, but I saw her in action at a community festival meeting, and she's one
Right,
good
well,
politician.
She's got my vote.
She's quite diplomatic. But anyway, there was also the election in Kentucky over governorship, which most people believe the Democratic candidate won, and the Republican is still holding out for.
To see if there's votes out there.
Right. So.
He's, scrounging through the hollers
What was it you said earlier today? Don't concede the vote
until, it's never over till the cyber vote comes in.
Precisely. That's
So
it, the cyber
if
vote.
suddenly they start finding a stick here, a machine there with extra votes on it, that's how Walker won in Wisconsin.
Has this replaced the old "we're waiting on the late rural votes to come in"?
Exactly.
And the write-in votes?
This is the high-tech version of that.
I got you. Okay.
We found some
Checks
uncounted
in the
machines.
internet.
We're going to download those. There's some coming in from overseas.
Right. Well, I'm sure there are lots of soldiers from Kentucky who are elsewhere. We have to wait for their vote. They probably voted Republican, unfortunately.
But
wasn't he far enough ahead to negate any of those?
well, about 5,000 votes,
Numbers.
which
Not
isn't
enough.
much, right?
Okay. Well, it seems to me that the Democrats will cave at the slightest, as we
Well, they have
exampled
historically,
Gore and
Al
Kerry.
Gore and Kerry.
Right, and other situations. Also, they will resign. Republicans just say, screw you, I ain't, no, make me.
We're out
Which-
looking for votes.
Yeah,
And
we're
when they
still
bring in a
counting.
whole bushel full of them,
We're
the
still counting.
Dems usually go, oh, that doesn't seem right, but they cave. But here's the whole thing is, Trump took Kentucky by 30 votes. Now the governor, who he shows up the
It's
day
just one
before
large family in the holler.
and does a rally for, and says,
Right.
I need this state.
Right.
And it looks like he might not be able to deliver that. And there's very specific reasons why that's the case. And again, in Louisville and in Lexington,
Yeah.
a particular
I'll take
type
Louisville
of
anytime.
a
I've been to both
particular
cities.
type of voter in the suburbs is deserting the Republican Party, which is
They were
why.
discussing that quite a bit. There's also a large
And-
contingency, suburban vote south of Cincinnati as well.
Yeah, in
Right.
northern Kentucky region,
Right.
and in the suburbs of Pennsylvania, the suburbs of Virginia.
Particularly eastern
Pittsburgh,
Pennsylvania, they
yeah.
were pointing out.
Yeah, and in the Pittsburgh area as well, but really in Bucks County and places like that. And that voter is, of course,
Well, in Washington County, which is where my folks were originally from, they went heavily for Trump. But so are you indicating that area too, which is just southwest of
no.
Pittsburgh? You're saying east of Pittsburgh then, or north of it actually?
Right, the suburbs, but also sort of
Up that
in
way.
the Philadelphia suburbs and suburbs
Well,
in and
yeah,
around
yeah,
Washington.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what
Eastern
you're
region.
looking at specifically is white, college-educated women.
Right. Yep.
And again, to be fair to Trump, only 10
No,
women.
no, wait.
Only
I'm
10
tired of
women.
that. Don't be fair
Only
to
10
Trump,
women
please.
in 2016.
No reason why we should be.
There's been other since, but only 10 women at that time said that they've been sexually assaulted by him.
Okay. Well, then we
It's-
were also
it's
going
fair
to
to-
discuss
The numbers have grown since,
We were going to discuss the state of Virginia and the elections there, which seemed to go
which is a
quite
monumental blue shift.
blue. Okay.
Yeah,
Talk about
For
suburbs.
first time in a quarter century,
Northern Virginia.
like 26 years, that
Right.
you've essentially got both legislative branches and the governorship. The
that's
Dems
in the
now
capital of
completely, control Virginia, and what they could do is actually allow voters to vote, because Virginia, the Republicans have been engaged in huge vote purging in that state to maintain control. Now the Democrats have power. Have your election officials actually register. Make it a shall. The election officials shall register the citizens of Virginia.
There you go. Shall register.
A command, like
Shall.
the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not kill.
Well, at any rate, I'm really also proud of the work that my niece, Brian Armbruster, does down in that region. She's a union activist, and she was happy her candidate won. And also, there was a candidate that made the news quite a bit that had flipped off
Yeah.
our big Don, and she won an election somewhere. But Virginia carried for the blue, but then again, Mississippi went entirely red. So one like this, one like that. We'll see what comes. In the meantime, since we've already been talking about his Trumpship, there were lots of hearings this week, but many times the witnesses didn't show, even though subpoenas are issued.
Were issued.
The president then is allowed to not only ignore subpoenas if they were issued to him, but he's allowed to say, no, you can't go.
Well, that'll ultimately be left up to a court, and
At
actually
what
some
point
of the
does it
people.
go to a court? What's it got to take to get one of these?
Oh,
cases?
these will go to the court because they'll come from the Intelligence Committee. And also,
Well, I mean,
the
when will
ones
that
that went to
start?
the court attempted, some have already gone, trying to quash the subpoena, saying that.
Quash the subpoena. That sounds painful.
Quash.
Sounds painful, yes. All right.
So, again, he's ordered people in his administration not to talk.
You're right, but does he, in your opinion, as a legal expert and a voting expert and a political expert, if you will, at least between the two of us, I'd say you would be, but is he allowed to do that? That's just what
Well,
I think.
I would argue that since Congress clearly
And what would
has
force him to?
oversight power,
His minions to show up.
impeachment is mentioned in the Constitution,
Right.
is that I don't see how the president would be allowed to obstruct justice when Congress is doing its job and has specific
Okay.
constitutional impeachment and oversight powers.
Now, but again, is there a certain point when you think this will be in the courts? It will start in a federal court, of course.
Well,
right?
some of Trump's people actually went to the federal courts
Okay.
and saying, because they don't want to be held in contempt of Congress or be hit
Right.
with
So at
obstruction
least,
charges.
yeah, right. And what were they told? That's what I'm.
Well, the court is deciding, but some of them, many of them, showed up, like Gordon Sondland, right, the former ambassador to the EU. So four
And a heavy
major,
contributor to Trump's campaign.
yeah, and as we speak, I mean, four major, people related to diplomacy in the Ukraine did in fact show up and
Right.
provide testimony.
Yeah,
and
Sondland's
Sondland's
came, yeah.
important because he came back.
He came
For
back.
his
right.
memory was, quote,
His memory-
refreshed.
Yeah, well, really, he did not want to be charged with perjury because I believe he would have.
Well, yeah,
been found
because originally he said
guilty
there
as a
was
result
no
of his testimony.
quid pro quo, couldn't
Right.
really remember any meetings on it. And then after three other people testified in private, and this is why you testify in private, it's like separating the witnesses, right? In a court of law,
Hey, Bob, before we go any further, I'd just like to testify that we're on WGRN, the Green Renaissance 94.1, and WCRS at
92.7.
and 98.3.
98.3 indeed.
Yes, indeed. So as
And as they used to say
so
in the
someone
MC,
came back and testified a second time. Some of the others
Right.
have. In the meantime, you've got like Mulvaney, who fails to show. And so is that what the court is deciding at this point? Whether or not a Mulvaney or any of those minions in the
are
close circle-
required.
Yes.
Or are they protected under dubious concept of executive
And right now,
privilege?
the courts are deciding that, you think? You believe so?
Yes,
Okay, all
in
right.
some cases, particularly the best thing to do would have been to go to the courts and ask to quash the subpoena and then abide by the courts. But again, a lot of stuff happening.
You mean for the
Suddenly-
Trump team? Is that
Yes,
what you're-
yeah. I mean, if I was on the Trump team,
Okay.
I would not be voluntarily,
Well, you're on our team,
hanging
so.
back, and I wouldn't be saying, "Well, the president told me not to show up."
Right.
Congress has long had subpoena power
Right.
and long exercises, and clearly they have it in the area of impeachment. But Sondland, right, not only shows back up, he says, okay, not only was there a meeting, but I'm the guy who led the meeting and, was negotiating on the quid pro quo.
Right. Okay.
So
yeah, I know that's important
how
stuff.
did he not remember, if you're gonna believe that story?
Right.
How did he not initially?
Again, he saw others testify
Well,
to that
and
effect.
he was clearly
Decided
lying,
he'd better come
right?
back
He
and
was
tell the
clearly
truth.
lying to Congress.
His lawyer
And
may
you're
have-
right, had he not refreshed his memory,
Right.
which actually happens all the time legally, particularly when evidence comes out
Hit that refresh button.
that shows you that maybe you're going to be up on obstruction or perjury charges.
Well, it seems to me, and this is something I've really been wanting to get into for a while now. It seems to me that a lot of people are confusing, and maybe purposefully so, from the Republicans, the situation that would be a court of law as opposed to what is going on in Congress, which are actually just hearings. So I often see on Facebook or again
Well, a
hear
certain-
Republican politicians saying, "Well, Trump's not getting proper representation," even those attorneys could have been in the hearings, right?
Well, here it is. I
And when it
mean,
goes public, I don't know, they'll still be beefing about this, but what are the exact differences between?
well, this is an impeachment,
Inquiry.
inquiry, right?
And if it gets to
And
impeachment,
really,
though, is that
the
same-
closest thing it's akin to is a grand jury,
But only akin to.
right? But grand juries are in fact secret, right? We have, you
Oh, yeah.
have no right, right? And
yeah.
this is what it is. So it's
Okay.
like, oh my God, it's being held in secret. It's a grand jury equivalent.
Wow.
Of course it's being held in secret. And here's why. Because if you let four bozos from the Trump administration sit next to each other, and the
My
one
mother was a bozo.
the one gets up there and lies, then the other four know the official lie. And they can all then coordinate
Their
because
lie, yeah.
they've seen what the official line is, what the official lie is.
Right.
But if you begin, as you would in any impeachment inquiry, because like Bill Clinton lied
Yes.
about,
Right.
you know,
As a matter of fact,
touching,
they found a lie.
having sex with Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah, and they found a lie in the Mueller investigation. Of course, that didn't get further. But yeah, anyway, go ahead. Yeah, I'm with you.
So,
From Trump.
of course, you're going to question these people in private, and there's Republicans in the room. The majority in the room are Democrats, but there's many Republicans
Yeah,
in
right.
there as well.
Right.
So, you know, it's not being done by the Democrats only. Both parties are present, and the reason you do that is so people like Gordon Sondland, the ambassador to the EU for Trump, don't lie, which clearly he did until others testified behind closed doors and told the truth and provided facts. So then he told the truth. That's why you're doing this in secret, so people don't lie. You put them under oath. And then once you've collected the evidence, you go public. It's like a grand jury. Grand juries. I've been before a grand jury, not for any crime I committed,
Right.
but they called me in over a
too.
newspaper story that I had written about bounty hunters. And again, I had interviewed one of the bounty hunters who had broke
What
into the
dog was it?
No, had broke into a house and put guns to a young couple's head with their kid there, and it turned out they had the wrong house.
Ah, yeah, right.
So they wanted to know, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
They wanted my notes, and I negotiated and said I don't want to surrender them, but I'll show them to you. I'll read them into the record, and tell you what the guy said.
So, hey, speaking of secret and testifying in secret, all right, let's go to the whistleblower because young Trump apparently outed him, apparently, correct, in a tweet? Well, you know,
Right. The
young Donnie
or attempted, you know.
Eric, but one of those morons. All right, so yeah, Uday and Husey, American version. But nonetheless, so that whistleblower's name though, at what point would he have to be in public to testify? Ever, or never in a proceeding that would include impeachment and then subsequent trial of the chief executive?
Well, you know, I think if he's outed, you know, which is dangerous because you're not going to get future whistleblowers. But I think it's
right.
inevitable that the whistleblower is going to testify. I don't think there's
Right.
going to be
But he'll
any
do it in
way
secret.
around it.
Anyway?
Yeah, but I think that'll be leaked. I believe the Republicans will, as you know, Donnie
to already
Jr.
have,
Yeah, you know, just like with Valerie Plame. But remember, Scooter Libby, Dick Cheney's
Novak was
chief
involved in
of
that, right.
staff, went to jail for outing Valerie Plame as a CIA
He was later pardoned.
covert
by,
agent.
Yeah, he was later pardoned by Trump, right?
He was indeed.
Yeah.
Well-known neocon, Scooter Libby.
Good old Scooter. Meanwhile, I don't know how much time we have. We have a few minutes left. You want to talk about old Rudy Giuliani and how soon he'll be under the bus? I mean, actually under it.
Well-
Right now, he's getting some love from the big guy.
Well, look, you take your private attorney and put him in charge of Ukrainian policy, particularly involving the quid pro quo. And the quid pro quo, again, to remind the listeners, was it's like, you spy on my key rival, Joe Biden, who's beating me in the polls, and his son, and I'll give you the military aid already passed by Congress, signed by me, but I've had it impounded by Mr. Mulvaney, who is, you know, in charge of the Office of Management and Budget as my temporary chief of staff, right? They impounded this money that was already earmarked for the Ukraine and refused to let it go until spying, until surveillance and investigations were done in the Ukraine on Trump's chief rival, Joe Biden, and his son.
And when they started those investigations, that's when the money was released, right?
Yeah, that's the quid pro quo.
Right. Well, I love how one of the Republicans at some point, Republicans said, how can you have a quid pro quo without the quo? But we know.
Or the quid,
There's plenty of quo there.
which is the money, the
A whole
quid.
lot of quo. So, but Rudy, though, I'm just wondering, like, how soon will Trump be trying to pin the tail on old
Well,
Rudy?
Rudy's lawyered up,
Situation.
so I think
Now he is, yes.
I think as soon as Rudy begins to squeal, like inevitably he will, Trump will claim it was all Rudy's idea. And again, Rudy's the president's attorney. What the hell was he doing, acting like a diplomat and taking charge of U.S.-Ukrainian foreign policy?
He was just hanging out with a couple of buds, doing some favors for Lev and Igor, a couple of swell fellas, patriots, and they were on that team. Well, so all this ridiculous continues. Oh, Bolton hasn't shown up yet.
Well, it looks like Bolton today as we speak, and we're talking on Friday here.
Mustache.
Friday the 8th. He says he was at, his lawyer said that John Bolton was at, quote, many relevant meetings. So it looks
Right.
like he's trying to work out a deal to testify. And again, remember, he was thrown under the bus and fired. There's a big debate. He claims he resigned, and Trump says, he was fired. So, he may have some scores to settle, and he
Well, I thought
knows
Trump
a lot
asked
of
him to
facts.
stick around for the next day to announce his resignation, and then Trump fired him, which is typical backdoor way to do things, eh, Donnie? So it's ridiculous soap opera that continues, and meanwhile, lots of other things are going on wrong in this world. But we probably won't get to them today on the other side of the news on
Well,
WGRN and CRS because
the world's
we're
burning.
We're going out here. Yes, the world is burning, and
We're closing out. We're wrapping it up.
we are.
All right.
As the world burns.
Again, it looks like I'll
the
leave you with
stomach
this.
turns.
At this point, Nixon only had 20% of the people wanting him impeached. Trump's already up to 49%. He's in trouble, and the words of Moscow Mitch, it looks like he's wavering. So long.